Welcome to the Perhaps Podcast. This is your host,
And your guest.
and today's episode we're talking about getting stuff done. Guest, the biggest thing that I've seen this week is that a lot of my friends that I've talked to have always been like, "Oh, I've always wanted to do this and I've always wanted to do that." And like it'd be nice to do this sometime. Particularly I was reading this book this past weekend, Walden and Civil Disobedience by Henry David Thoreau. And one of
Mm-hmm.
my friends reached out to me and was like, reached out to me like a business acquaintance. Um, they were like, I've always wanted to read that book. And for some reason, it really like resonated with me because I've always wanted to read that book myself. But
Right.
like this past week, I just decided like, okay, I'm going to do it, you know?
Wow. Yeah.
So now here I am
Congrats.
reading the book, 2 chapters in. It's been 2 weeks, making good progress,
Yeah.
you know? But what really struck out to me is that my friend, said that comment like, "Oh, I'd really love to do that," and that's kind of where that went. You know,
Mm-hmm.
they're probably still not reading the book, so it was just a reminder to me that like if you want to make stuff happen, you got to do it. There's no other way.
Yeah.
I've been watching The Dropout on Netflix, on Hulu.
Mm-hmm.
It's about Theranos, and I forgot what the lady's name is, but the founder of Theranos and how she like started the startup and whatnot. And one of the things she quoted in her office space was Yoda, and he said, um, "Was it there is do or not do? There is only do or not do. There is no try." Hopefully, I'm quoting that correctly,
Right.
but yeah, I don't know. I'm just feeling a lot of that energy recently.
It's interesting that you mentioned that because I feel like I'm experiencing kind of the same thing. Like when you're talking about quotes, when you're talking about like that feeling, the quote that comes up for me is something along the lines of if not now, when, you know? And I'm also like dancing with the book as well, but I'll keep it to myself until like it's complete.
Yeah.
Um, I feel like a lot of the things that we're passionate about, there's a lot of hoops to not only get it done, but there's a lot of hurdles of everything saying that it's secondary,
Yeah.
right? Um, and it's like a tale as old as time.
Beauty and the
um,
Beast.
be it like your family, be it your friends, be it whoever you find yourself respecting,
Yeah.
eventually, you know, or sometimes even the inspiring people. But then, that's a story for another day. Turn around and end up saying, you got to pay attention to this, right? Either because they care, either because they don't, for whatever reason. Everyone comes to a point in their life, I believe, or I think, or it's definitely been relevant in mine, where the question is, do you go the normal path, right? Or do you go the
The
path
normal and safe
that,
path that may
right? Or
not
do
be
you
what you
go,
actually want to do with your life.
right, right? Or do you go the path that like inspires you, that feels like you?
Yeah.
Um, I
I
feel like I've been wrestling with that subject in general.
yeah.
I could say that, from day one, I've been totally a person who's like, do the things that you want to do. And I said yes, but as a person who feels like they can say that, that doesn't mean that one hasn't felt the pressure of those hoops,
Yeah.
right? Um, I feel like maybe even more so, right? Because then everyone else is around you and looking at you like, how do you still have this attitude of like going in the direction, right? That you want to go in. What does that mean,
Yeah.
right? And I feel like those hoops, they unfold in different ways, especially as you get older, right? Because it changes from like, oh, this is your niche, or why do you like that, or it's this career or that career, right? Or it's this talent to that talent to then like what's responsible,
Yeah. Yeah,
right?
it's very
And
interesting cuz when you're a kid, right? Like You ask second graders, third graders, oh, like, what do you want to be? Oh, I want to be the president of the United States. Oh, go for it. Everyone is so like, yeah, you could do it. Blah 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 blah.
Mm,
Get here, out here, maybe mid 20s, early 30s.
mm-hmm.
If you're not already on a path to do that, people are like, bro, like, what are you trying to do? It's not gonna
Yeah.
happen. You need to like, what's it called? Lower your expectations
Yeah.
and like,
That
yeah,
that
be responsible about it. Which I mean, obviously there's some wisdom there that's worth
mm-hmm.
keeping. Um,
Yeah, yeah, no, that reminds me of something I saw on YouTube. Um, there was this person who said, when we're babies, right? And we just start to walk, everyone is around you like, oh my gosh, yeah, 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 let's go, you can do it, blah blah blah. You start walking and it's fantastic. And even when the baby falls, right, there's encouragement. There's like, oh, you good, you're okay,
you
all
can
right,
do it. Yeah.
let's keep going, let's keep going. And then, as you said, like, you grow up and you want to start something new, and then it like flips, right?
Hmm.
So I think in a lot of ways we experience that, you know, no matter what side of the story we go on,
Yeah.
whether we're like, we're gonna go this path, or we're gonna go to the path that speaks to us, or we're gonna go some like weird path where we don't even know what we're doing. Like, we feel that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
So
I feel like,
I guess the question then becomes like, how does one move past those obstacles if you feel like the urge
yeah,
to go down a path that you want,
yeah. Well, I'll speak shortly to that. I think what I've mostly encountered is individuals who just say like, well, I just decided to go for it, and that is that, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And like people have similar stories. Um, with like, this is what made me made the decision. I had to do this and that. But I think at the end of the day, what we really need to do is foster communities that allow people to try to do what they want to do.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
because like, I mean, definitely like you can do it on your own and be an individual. That's very hard though, because it's not until like you have that momentum and you start like becoming well known and start gaining notoriety and success, the where you
Mm-hmm.
feel like, oh, like here's the entire crowd of people I've been searching for my entire life that I never saw.
Mm.
So that period from when you're like, okay, I'm gonna do what I want to do, to when like
Mm-hmm.
you actually quote unquote arrive where you want to be, can be really
Mm-hmm.
lonely and really emotionally draining, and physically and mentally and
Mm-hmm.
everything, financially.
Mm-hmm.
um, so if we could just, create little incubators, I guess,
Yeah.
within our communities, that would help, people try to do what they want to do. And
Yeah.
maybe even exposure, to different things earlier on. Because I feel like even me going through like a decent like middle school and high school, I still wasn't exposed to like the variety of things out there that one can do.
Mm-hmm. I
Uh,
would I would say there's a couple of things, right? Because then you have the person who's like sitting down and it's like, okay, well, what do I do today? you know, um, the communities are there, right? You can either think about something to create them, but they are out there, right?
yeah,
Yet, let's say it's not even about the communities, right? I would say at the end of the day, if you couldn't necessarily rely on something that's already out there, right? You have to stick to a mentality. And sticking to a mentality doesn't mean that it's not gonna ebb and flow, but it's definitely your North Star. What is this mentality? This mentality is solution focused, right?
yeah,
If you're coming into the room, if you're coming to the table with your own idea, with your own passion, with your own way forward, right? To whatever next step, right? Whatever end goal you want to have for a certain time period, whatever it is, whatever is on the table, you have to be in a mindset of solution focus.
Yeah.
If you're coming into the room, if you're sitting at that table, if you're looking at that goal, that sheet of paper, that whatever is there in a negative light, in the how can this even be possible, in a very, very doubting stage, you're already like losing the battle.
Yeah.
Right? Because whatever, like even if in your heart you're like, man, I want something, like, if you're saying it like, oh, I want it, but you're not seeing it as possible, you're not entering a space where you're like, okay, what are the things to then get me to where I need to go,
Yeah.
then what, even if you do come out of that session, right, you leave the table, you leave the room with something in hand, then comes the question of, is it the best thing that you could have come up with, right? Because your mentality was kind of stunted.
Yeah.
Right. So you have to keep that inner, right? It's a ready for it, and then a ready for seeing it. That needs to happen. Like, okay, I want to get to the table. And then when I get to the table and I'm thinking about this, I'm actually thinking about it in a way that is possible.
Yeah.
Right. Because you don't, especially if the outside feels terrible, you don't want to be defeating yourself. Right.
Yeah.
About you knowing that one is something you want to do, and two, it's possible.
Yeah.
Somehow, some way. Right. And then I guess when we start getting into communities, right, especially for kind of like, I'm coming from like this entrepreneurial mindset, right, especially in those instances where you need to make those connections, right, even if it's not you at the helm. Yeah, screw that. Even if you're not the quote unquote big director of the situation, whatever connections you make, you need to know that those connections are also ready to sit at the table
Yeah.
of whatever is there on the table,
Yeah.
and have that solution focus as well towards whatever the goal is. And if they don't, because people are people, then they have to have a very specific seat, right? Like you need to create those boundaries. You need to know that, when I'm engaging with this resource, this program, this person, this is what I'm here for. And those spaces that don't completely like feel like mentally aligned, right?
Yeah.
And that's only if you absolutely need those situations. So I guess that's just how I see it. In the interim, while we're talking about like, wanting to build more communities, or maybe even that, if that's the goal, right? If that's the thing that's on the table, like a key to that as a person who wants to get to whatever your other side is your own mentality and being very careful about who you let to like within your circle.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So those are my thoughts on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think at the end of the day, you just have to give it a go. Like if you don't do anything, then nothing will happen.
Also that.
So,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, today's talk was rather short, but we'll keep it at this. Do you have anything else to say, guest?
Um, whatever you're feeling to get to, it's there for a reason. Allow yourself to know what you know, want what you want, and deserve what you deserve. Hold on to that, and in a way, you're already winning like a big portion of the journey to get there. And I think that's the thing that I'll leave this with.
Well, all right. You want to close this out?
And that was this episode. It's your host.
And your guest, except you're the guest and I'm the host. Thank you for listening to the Perhaps Podcast,
Woo.
and we'll see you next time.
Bye.